Hello, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you've joined us today.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into something that, well, it causes a surprising amount of anxiety for English learners.
Oh, definitely.
And honestly, even some native speakers, too. We're talking about navigating phone calls in English.
It really is a unique challenge, isn't it? I mean, think about how much we normally rely on seeing someone when we talk.
Right.
You watch their eyes, their mouth, their hands moving, their posture, all of that. That body language gives us so much context, hints about their mood or if they understand what we're saying, maybe if they're about to jump in.
Yeah, all those little signals.
Exactly. It's this whole rich layer of communication and poof, it's gone on the phone.
Yeah.
You're left relying purely on sound.
Just the words, the tone of voice, the pace they're speaking at.
That's it. It's kind of like trying to understand a really complex situation, but with like half the necessary information missing.
Precisely. And that absence of visual cues, that's exactly why phone calls can feel so daunting, so intimidating sometimes. As the material we looked at points out, even for someone who's completely fluent, a bad connection or someone talking really fast can totally throw you off.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all been there, right? Static on the line or the signal keeps dropping.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
And you're not just translating the language itself, you're trying to decode these purely auditory signals, often with, static or those annoying dropouts interrupting things.
It's a lot to process with just your ears.
That's a really crucial insight the source material emphasizes. Phone communication demands a different kind of toolkit.
Because your usual ways of checking understanding, like a quick nod or maybe a slightly confused look or even a smile to show you're following, they just aren't available.
Exactly. You need specific verbal strategies, words and phrases to manage the conversation effectively, especially, when things go wrong or get unclear.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive then is pretty crystal clear.
Let's hear it.
We're going to extract the absolute essential strategies and phrases directly from this source material we've been given.
Good.
We want to equip you, our listener, with the language you need to feel more confident, more in control, and ultimately just more comfortable when you're making or receiving calls in English.
And based on the material, it looks like we'll cover the whole journey of a call, really.
From start to finish.
Yeah, pretty much. We'll start right at the very beginning, how to open a call naturally and, importantly, appropriately for different situations. You don't start a business call like you greet a friend, right?
Definitely not.
Then we'll move into those common, really practical phrases you'll need mid-conversation. Things like asking for someone specific or putting someone on hold or handling transfers.
The nuts and bolts of it.
Exactly. And critically, we'll dedicate a good chunk of time to maybe the most important skill of all.
Which is?
Knowing exactly what to say when you didn't quite hear something, or maybe you heard it but didn't understand the meaning, or, the classic bad connection problem.
Ah, yes, the clarification techniques. Crucial.
Absolutely crucial. The goal, as the source highlights, is really building confidence through competence, helping you sound not just understandable, but genuinely confident and, professional when needed.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's unpack this challenge then and dive deep. And where better to start than, right at the very beginning.
The opening.
That first impression on the phone.
Yeah.
Setting the tone for the whole conversation.
It's absolutely vital. I mean, the material makes a really strong case that those first few seconds of a phone call basically establish the whole context, the dynamic between you and the other person.
Right. Get it right, and things flow smoothly. Get it wrong, and
it can be awkward, yeah. A clear, confident start immediately puts you and the other person more at ease. And it signals professionalism if, that's the goal of the call.
And as you mentioned earlier, the approach you take is entirely dictated by who you're calling. That context is key.
Absolutely. The source material wisely segments this right away, which is helpful.
So it breaks it down.
Yes, it gives us that clear distinction. First, between calling a business or some other kind of formal setting, and second, making a much more casual call, like to a friend.
Okay.
And then as a separate piece, it addresses how you answer the phone in those different contexts, too.
Right, because receiving calls has its own set of rules.
Yeah.
Okay, let's zero in on calling a business or a formal setting first. This is where, I guess, politeness and professionalism are absolutely paramount.
Precisely. This is where you want to sound organized and respectful. The material provides us with some standard, very effective ways to start these kinds of calls, and the structure is actually quite consistent.
Okay, like what? Give us an example.
Well, a very common and polite way to begin is something like, "Hello, this is Michael Johnson. May I speak with Sarah Miller?"
Okay, simple enough.
Yeah, you offer a standard greeting, "Hello," clearly state who you are, "This is Michael Johnson," and then you state your immediate purpose in this case, asking for a specific person. "May I speak with Sarah Miller?"
Right, and I noticed the phrasing there, may I speak with? Hmm, that sounds quite polite, doesn't it? Much softer than just saying, I want to speak with Sarah Miller.
Exactly. It is softer. It's a polite request form. It signals respect for the other person's time and, their role as maybe a gatekeeper or receptionist. It's not demanding.
Makes sense. What about other formal situations?
Well, imagine you're calling from a business yourself. Your opening might need to incorporate your affiliation, where you're calling from.
Oh, okay.
The source gives this excellent example. "Good morning. This is Olivia Carter from Greenfield Bank. I'm calling regarding your account."
Okay, let's break that down.
Sure, you've got a time-specific greeting, "Good morning." You identify yourself and your organization. This is Olivia Carter from Greenfield Bank. And then you immediately state the general purpose of the call. "I'm calling regarding your account."
So the person answering knows right away who you are, where you're from, and roughly why you're calling.
Exactly. It gives the receiver all that necessary information right up front. Very efficient, very professional.
What about something like making an appointment? That's pretty common.
Yeah, another classic formal scenario. Scheduling appointments or maybe making specific inquiries. The source provides this variation. "Hi, this is David Thompson. I'm calling to schedule an appointment with Dr. Williams."
Okay, interesting. That one uses hi instead of hello. Is that okay in a formal context?
It often is these days. Hi is definitely slightly less formal than hello or good morning, afternoon, but it's become pretty acceptable in many, many business contexts. The key thing is that it still follows that core pattern, greeting plus your name plus specific purpose.
So the structure is still there.
The structure is the important part. The key takeaway for all these formal openings is really clarity and directness, but wrapped in politeness. You need the other person to know who you are and generally what you need pretty quickly without sounding abrupt.
Right. Okay, now here's a very practical situation. What if you need to call a company, but you don't know the name of the specific person you need to speak to? You might just know, say, the department or maybe their job title.
That's a great question, and yet it happens all the time. The source material addresses this crucial point directly.
What does it suggest?
It advises using the department name or the person's position or role. So instead of asking for a specific name, you might say something like, "Hello, this is Emma Scott. May I speak with someone in the customer service department?"
Ah, okay. So you direct them based on function.
Exactly. That tells the person answering precisely where they need to transfer your call or who might be able to help you. It's efficient for them too.
Or maybe another example, like if you're following up on something specific, maybe a job application.
Yeah, the example provided for that scenario is, "Hi, this is Daniel Parker. I'd like to speak with the hiring manager about a job opening."
Okay. I'd like to speak with. That's another polite phrasing, isn't it? Similar to may I speak with?
It is. Both "may I" and "could I" and "I'd like to" are common polite ways to state your request. And again, it clearly specifies the role, the hiring manager, you need to connect with, even if you don't have a name.
Got it. So be specific about the department or role if you don't have a name.
Mm-hmm. Now, a very common outcome in these formal calls, unfortunately, is that the person you actually need isn't immediately available when you call.
Right. They might be busy or out.
Exactly. So the source prepares you for the typical responses you're likely to hear in that situation. You might hear something like, "I'm sorry, Sarah is in a meeting right now. Would you like to leave a message?"
Okay, in a meeting. That's common.
Very common. Or if they're out for longer, maybe you'll hear, "Unfortunately, Dr. Williams is out of the office today. Can I take a message for you?"
Right. So in a meeting often implies they might be back later today, whereas out of the office today usually means they're gone for the day or longer.
That's generally the implication, yeah. And notice, both of those standard responses offer you the option to leave a message.
Which is the critical next step the source highlights, right?
Absolutely. When you're calling a business or in any formal context, you must be prepared for this possibility. You need to be ready to leave a concise, clear message if the person isn't available.
Preparation is definitely key here. It avoids that awkward pause when they ask, would you like to leave a message? And you're like,
Exactly. Have your key points ready, your name, the main reason for your call, briefly, and crucially, your phone number. Have it ready to go.
So you can just deliver it smoothly.
Yes. It saves time and avoids fumbling when you're put on the spot.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense for formal calls. Let's shift gears now quite dramatically to calling a friend, a completely casual call.
Right.
The source correctly identifies this as a situation where you can totally relax your language, be much more informal.
Oh, the difference is night and day, isn't it? The goal here isn't strict professionalism. It's warmth, connection, ease.
So what do those openings sound like?
Well, the examples given are things we probably all use, like, hey, Jake, what's up?
Super casual.
Totally.
Huh.
Or sometimes you might just want to check if they're actually free before you launch into a big story, right?
Yeah, good point.
So you might say, hi, Emily, do you have a minute? Or, hey, Alex, how's it going? Just a general check-in.
Or maybe, hi, Sophie, are you free to talk now? Just being direct about checking their availability.
All of those are comfortable, everyday ways to start a chat with someone you know well.
And the source points out some key linguistic features here, the differences from formal calls.
Yeah, it highlights, for instance, that we use first names right away. No Mr. or Ms., obviously.
Right.
Contractions are absolutely standard. You use them without thinking.
And the greetings are much more relaxed.
Definitely. Hey is super common, often replacing the more formal hello or good morning.
Mm-hmm.
The whole vibe is just much more like a natural, spontaneous chat than, say, a business transaction.
The expectation is just completely different.
Exactly. You're usually not calling for some specific, time-sensitive business purpose. You're calling to connect personally, to catch up, to share something.
Makes sense. And what about if your friend doesn't answer? The source touches on that too.
It does, briefly. It suggests, you might still leave a voicemail, but it will likely be very informal.
Right, not like the formal message we just talked about.
No, not at all. It might just be something quick like, hey, Jake, it's Peter. Give me a call back when you're free.
Basically like a spoken text message.
Pretty much. Or perhaps even more common these days, especially for younger people maybe, you might just skip the voicemail altogether and send a quick text instead. Hey, called us. Call back when free. Something like that.
So the medium, the phone is the same, but the social context, calling a friend versus a business, completely changes the communication strategy and the language you choose.
Totally. Context is everything.
Okay, now let's flip it around again. We've talked about making calls, formal and casual. Let's talk about answering the phone. Because how you receive a call is just as context dependent, right?
Crucially so. Yeah. The source material correctly emphasizes that your answering phrase depends entirely on, well, which phone line is ringing, or maybe who you expect might be calling you on that line.
Okay, so let's take the formal example first. Say you're answering a dedicated business line, maybe the main number for your company, your specific department.
Right. In that case, the greeting needs to be professional, efficient, and informative. You need to let the caller know they've reached the right place and that you're ready to help.
So what does that sound like?
Well, the examples from the source are structured to do just that. Immediately identify the location and the speaker, and then offer help. A classic example is, hello, thank you for calling Anderson & Co. This is Daniel speaking. How can I help you?
Okay, quite a bit of information packed in there.
Yes. You acknowledge the call. Hello, thank you for calling. You name the business, Anderson & Co. You identify yourself, this is Daniel speaking, and you state your readiness to assist. How can I help you? It covers all the bases.
Very clear, very professional. Is there another variation?
Sure, sometimes it might be time-specific, like, good afternoon, this is Jennifer from Elite Marketing. How may I assist you today?
Similar structure again?
Very similar. Greeting, identification, name and company, and that offer of assistance, how may I assist you, is just a slightly more formal version of how can I help you. It sets a professional, welcoming tone right from the start.
Okay, now let's contrast that sharply with answer your personal mobile phone, especially if, it's mostly friends and family who call you on it.
Right. The answering phrase here is going to be much, much more relaxed. It mirrors those casual outgoing calls we talked about. You might just pick up and say really simply, hey, it's Alex.
Or even just hello, or hello, what's up?
Yeah, exactly. Or sometimes, if you see the caller ID and know who it is, you might answer specifically to them. Hi, Sophie, how's your day going?
Much warmer, much more personal.
Definitely. Warm, personal, informal greetings. You're signaling a different kind of relationship.
So to kind of summarize the source's point here,
Yeah.
Formal answering is structured, it's professional, it prioritizes getting key information across quickly.
Uh-huh.
Whereas casual answering is relaxed, it's warm, and it prioritizes that personal connection.
Spot on. It's all about matching your language and your tone to the specific situation and the line you're answering.
And the material offers a really valuable practice exercise right about here, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's a great little prompt. It asks you to imagine you're answering a business call, and then try saying this specific phrase out loud. Hello, this is Michael from Greenfield Bank. How can I help you?
Just saying it out loud.
Yes. Practicing that specific phrase out loud is incredibly effective. It helps you sort of internalize the pattern, the rhythm of it, so you can deliver it smoothly when the real pressure is on.
Because, let's be honest, sometimes the phone ringing can be a bit startling, right?
Yeah.
You're in the middle of something else.
Totally. Having this practice response ready to go just reduces that initial jolt, that moment of, oh, hello. It makes you sound prepared from the very first second.
Yeah, I can see how that would help.
And it builds on itself. A strong, clear introduction immediately contributes to you sounding more confident and capable, which in turn actually makes you feel more confident.
It's like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. Mastering that first line, whether you're making the call or answering it, is genuinely one of the best ways to feel prepared for whatever the rest of the call might bring.
Getting those first few seconds right really can set the stage for a much, much smoother conversation. Okay, so we've tackled how to start calls and how to answer them in both formal and casual ways. Now let's move into the middle part of the call.
Right?
What are the essential phrases you need once the conversation is actually underway?
Okay, so once you're past the initial greetings and introductions, you'll inevitably encounter common situations that require specific, standard language. This section of the source material covers those really practical phrases you need during the core exchange.
Okay, like what? Let's revisit asking for someone specific. Maybe you've already gotten past the main switchboard, or you've called a direct line, but someone else picked up.
Right. So you need to ask for the person you intended to reach. The phrases here are still polite and direct. You might say, "May I speak with Jessica Adams, please?"
Okay, that's the same polite form we saw earlier.
Yes, it's a standard, widely understood way to make that request politely. The please on the end adds that extra touch.
Is there another way?
Okay.
Maybe slightly less formal.
Yeah, perhaps slightly less formal, but still perfectly appropriate in many business settings, is simply asking about availability. Is Mark Roberts available?
Okay, that gets straight to the point.
It does. Is he there or not? And remember that option if you only know the department. You can use that mid-call too. Could I speak to someone in the billing department? Notice the could I. Here another polite modal verb, similar in function to may I. These words just soften the request, make it sound less demanding.
So may I, could I, is available. Different ways to ask for someone politely.
Exactly. And just like when you make the initial call, the source reminds us you might still hear those same standard responses if the person isn't free.
Right, back to in a meeting or out of the office.
Yeah, you might hear, "I'm sorry, Jessica's not available right now. Would you like to leave a message?" Or perhaps, "Mark is out of the office at the moment. Can I take a message?"
So you need to be prepared for that possibility, even mid-call, and ready to leave that message.
Always be ready to leave a message in a formal context. It's just good practice. It's reassuring to know the common patterns of response, though, isn't it? It makes it less surprising when it happens.
Definitely. Okay, another thing that happens a lot in formal or business calls is needing to put someone on hold or maybe transfer their call to someone else.
Oh yeah, very common, especially if you work in any kind of customer service or reception role. These actions have specific, expected phrases associated with them.
You can't just go silent or abruptly transfer someone.
No, definitely not. If you need a moment, maybe to look up some information or quickly consult with a colleague, putting the caller on hold briefly is standard practice. But you need to use clear and polite phrases.
Like what?
The source suggests a very direct one. Please hold for a moment. Short, clear, polite.
Okay.
Or sometimes providing a brief reason makes it even clearer for the caller and manages their expectation. For example, "Can I put you on hold for a moment while I check that for you?"
So they know why they're waiting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sets the expectation for hopefully just a brief wait. And then there's transferring calls.
Right, connecting them to someone else.
When you need to connect the caller to a different person or a whole different department, you need specific phrases to inform them clearly what's happening. You don't want them to suddenly hear a different voice or ringing tone unexpectedly.
No, that would be confusing.
So, examples from the source include things like, let me transfer you to the sales department. Using the verb transfer makes it very clear.
Or if you know the person's name.
Then you could say, I'll connect you with Lisa in customer service. Here, connect is used, another common verb for this action. Transfer and connect are the key verbs here.
So inform them clearly before you do it.
Absolutely. These phrases are just part of the established etiquette, the standard procedure in most business settings. Using them correctly makes the interaction feel smooth and professional, both for you and for the caller.
And the source also includes the phrases you might hear, right? If you're the one who's been put on hold.
Yes, that's important too, because when the person comes back on the line after you've been waiting, they won't just, launch straight back into the conversation.
That would feel a bit jarring.
Right. They'll often start with something polite to acknowledge your wait, like, thank you for holding. I appreciate your patience.
Okay, acknowledging the wait.
Or maybe a shorter version like, sorry for the wait. How can I assist you? These phrases signal that they're back, they're ready to continue, and they politely acknowledge that you've been holding. Being familiar with hearing these helps you know the conversation is resuming smoothly.
Good to know what to expect on the receiving end of being put on hold. Okay, finally, within this sort of mid-call section, the source revisits leaving a message. But this time, it focuses on the specific phrases for telling the person who answered what message you want relayed.
Right. So the person you wanted is unavailable, and you've decided not just to ask for a callback, but to leave a specific piece of information or instruction.
Okay.
You'll need to phrase that clearly. You might start with something like, could you take a message for John? That signals your intent.
And then you give the message.
Exactly. Or if maybe you know the person who answered, or the context is slightly less formal, you might say, can you tell Emma that I called? Using tell is a bit more casual than take a message for, but still perfectly fine in many professional contexts, depending on the relationship.
Okay. And what if you don't want them to call back, but you plan to try again yourself?
Good point. You can instruct them about that too. For example, please let Daniel know I'll call back later. This manages expectations for Daniel. He knows you called. He knows the topic, maybe, but he also knows he doesn't necessarily need to call you back right away because you intend to call again.
That's useful, manages expectations. Now, thinking about leaving messages, the source focuses on these phrases for initiating it. But isn't there something else absolutely crucial?
What are you thinking of?
Well, actually leaving your details. It's not explicitly listed right next to these initiating phrases in the source, but drawing from the whole context of leaving a message in a formal setting, it seems vital.
Ah, yes. You mean actually stating your name and number clearly.
Exactly. You have to do that, right? So after saying, could you take a message for John, you'd absolutely need to follow up with something like, this is your name calling from your company if you have one. My number is your number.
You are absolutely right. That added detail is incredibly important for practical, real-world phone communication. It might seem obvious, but it's easy to forget in the moment.
And shouldn't you maybe say the number slowly? Or repeat it?
Yes, definitely. That's a fantastic point. Remember, the person taking the message has no visual cues. They're relying entirely on hearing your information correctly, often while trying to scribble it down quickly on a notepad.
So saying it clearly and maybe repeating it helps them get it right.
Dramatically reduces the chance of error. So you'd say, my number is 555-123-4567. That's 555-123-4567. Or maybe repeat the whole thing. It shows consideration, it shows professionalism, and it makes it much more likely you'll get that call back.
It's such a small step, but yeah, it makes a huge difference in whether the message actually works.
Okay, great point. So we've navigated starting, answering, and these common mid-call actions like asking for people, holding, transferring, leaving messages. But now let's face what might be the most stressful scenario for many learners.
Oh, what's that? You just didn't catch something. The sound was bad, they spoke way too fast, or you heard the words but didn't understand a key term. What do you do then?
Ah, okay, yes. This section on asking for clarification is, in my opinion, honestly one of the most valuable parts of the source material we looked at.
Why is that?
Because it gives you the specific language tools you need to handle those inevitable moments of confusion or misunderstanding. This is where that lack of visual cues we talked about right at the start really hits hard.
Right, because you can't just give a confused look.
Exactly. You can't get a hint from a facial expression that you missed something. You must ask verbally. And knowing how to ask gracefully without feeling embarrassed or interrupting awkwardly is absolutely key to maintaining your composure and keeping the conversation on track.
Okay, so how does the source break this down? Does it give different phrases for different problems?
It does, very helpfully. It breaks it down based on why you didn't understand. So first, let's take the simplest case. You just didn't hear something clearly.
Okay, maybe there was background noise at their end, or a glitch in the connection, or maybe they just mumbled or spoke too quietly.
Right. For that situation, you basically just need to ask them to repeat what they said. The phrases provided are direct but still polite. Often they start with a small apology for the interruption or acknowledging a potential technical issue.
Like what?
For example, a very standard one is, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Simple, direct, polite.
Okay, sorry, could you repeat that?
Got it. Or you could be slightly more specific about the problem from your end. "I didn't catch that. Could you say it again?"
I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
That's a really common phrase in English, isn't it? For meaning I didn't hear or understand.
Very common, yes. And asking them to say it again is just a straightforward request for simple repetition of the last thing they said.
And it's okay to use these. You won't sound stupid.
Not at all. These are simple, standard phrases. Honestly, don't ever hesitate to use them. It is far, far better to ask for a repetition than to just guess what they said and potentially misunderstand crucial information.
That's true. Misunderstandings can cause bigger problems later.
Exactly. And it's perfectly acceptable to use these phrases multiple times in a call if you need to. If the connection is bad or they're just speaking really fast, you might need to ask again. It's fine.
Okay, so that's if you didn't hear it. Now, the source makes an important distinction, right? What if you did hear the words clearly, but you simply didn't understand what they meant?
Yes, this is different. Maybe they use some vocabulary you're not familiar with, or some technical jargon specific to their field, or perhaps the concept itself was just complex or explained unclearly.
Right, you heard the sounds, but the meaning isn't getting through.
Exactly. So this requires a different type of clarification phrase. You're not asking for a repetition of the sound, you're asking for an explanation of the meaning.
Okay, so what do you say then?
The source suggests phrases like, "Could you clarify what you mean?" This is a very polite and professional way to ask for more detail, or maybe a simpler explanation of the same point.
Could you clarify what you mean? Okay.
Or you could acknowledge your own lack of comprehension a bit more directly and ask them to try a different approach. Something like, "I'm not sure I understand. Can you explain it another way?"
Ah, I like that one. Can you explain it another way?
Yeah, it clearly signals that the way they just explained it isn't quite landing for you, and you need them to rephrase it, maybe use different words, or break it down more simply.
So these phrases are really about getting to the actual meaning, not just the words.
Precisely. You heard the words, but the message itself is lost or fuzzy. By asking for clarification, "Could you clarify?" or a different explanation, "Can you explain it another way?" you're essentially guiding the speaker towards making their message understandable to you. It actually shows you're engaged and actively trying to understand rather than just sort of passively accepting the confusion.
That's a good way to look at it. Okay, and then there's one more category the source mentions, right? The technical issues.
Yes, the specific issue of a poor technical connection, which, let's face it, is incredibly common with phone calls, especially mobile-to-mobile calls or calls in areas with bad reception.
We've all been there. The voice breaks up or there's a weird echo.
Exactly. So the source provides phrases that specifically address the technical problem itself while still requesting the information again. For example, "I think we have a bad connection. Can you say that again?"
Okay, so you're naming the problem bad connection and asking for the repetition.
Yes. It informs them that the sound quality might be poor from your end, which could be why you missed something. It takes the blame off just your listening skills, so to speak.
That's useful. What's another one?
You could use even more specific language about what's happening with the sound, like, "You're cutting out. Could you repeat that?"
Cutting out, that's a very common expression, isn't it? For when the audio signal is breaking up, intermittent.
Very common, yes. It perfectly describes that choppy sound when the connection is unstable.
So using these technical phrases is helpful because it lets the other person know there might be an issue they need to address too.
Potentially, yes. Maybe they need to move to a different spot for better signal, or perhaps speak more clearly into their microphone. It's not just about you missing information, it's kind of diagnosing the problem within the communication channel itself.
Okay, this is really practical stuff. Knowing these different phrases, for asking for clarification, whether it's because you didn't hear, didn't understand the meaning, or the connection is just bad. It feels like it removes so much of the potential anxiety.
It really does.
You realize you're not powerless in that situation. You have specific, polite tools you can use to make sure you get the information you need.
Absolutely. It shifts your focus from just worrying about misunderstanding to confidently using a specific phrase to resolve the misunderstanding. It's a much more proactive and empowering approach.
And the source includes another one of those excellent practice prompts here, doesn't it? Focusing on a really common phone call challenge.
It does, yeah. It zeroes in on the problem of the other person speaking too fast, which happens a lot, especially if they're a native speaker talking at their natural pace or if they're nervous themselves.
So what's the practice suggestion?
It suggests imagining the person on the other end is speaking too quickly and then practicing saying this specific phrase, "Sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you say it again more slowly?"
Ah, okay, so it combines two ideas.
Exactly. It's a perfect combination of the techniques we just discussed. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Addresses the fact you missed the information, likely due to the speed, and then, could you say it again more slowly? Provides a very clear, polite instruction on exactly how they can help you understand better next time.
That seems incredibly useful. Practicing that specific phrase definitely prepares you for a very real and frequent scenario on the phone.
It really does. And again, it's so important to emphasize. Using phrases like this, asking for repetition or clarification or for someone to slow down, it is not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of having bad English.
Native speakers do it too.
All the time. Native speakers ask each other to repeat things constantly, especially on the phone. Using these phrases is simply a sign that you value clear communication. It's actually a hallmark of professionalism and effectiveness in any language. Knowing you can confidently ask for clarification when needed truly builds that crucial confidence on the phone.
It really does feel empowering. Yeah. It means you can take control of the conversation when you're missing information rather than just sitting there struggling silently and getting lost.
Precisely. You're an active participant in ensuring understanding.
Okay, wow. We have covered a significant amount of ground in this deep dive, haven't we?
We really have. It's been quite comprehensive.
We've gone right from those crucial first moments of starting and answering calls, really mastering the differences between formal and casual settings there.
Uh-huh. The openings and answers.
Then we moved into equipping you with those essential mid-call phrases for navigating common actions like asking for people, putting them on hold, transferring calls, and leaving messages effectively.
The practical mechanics of the call.
And then critically, as we just discussed, we've armed you with the specific language needed to confidently and politely ask for clarification, whatever the reason, whether the problem is hearing, understanding, or just a bad connection.
Yeah, that clarification toolkit is key.
And I think just having these structures and phrases ready, maybe having practiced them mentally or even better, out loud, like the source suggests.
Ooh.
That's absolutely the key, isn't it? To mitigating the stress that phone calls can cause.
I completely agree. Especially when you're using a language that isn't your first, that anxiety can be high.
These phrases provide that essential scaffolding that supports structure, precisely because you can't rely on seeing the other person.
Exactly. On the phone, the phrases themselves have to do all the work. They have to convey everything, your politeness, your purpose, and your need for help when clarity breaks down. They are, in effect, your verbal body language substitutes.
That's a great way to put it. Verbal body language. Okay, so now the source material doesn't just dump all this information on us. It actually presents a practical next step.
Ah, yes, the challenge.
A challenge task, specifically designed for you, the listener, to put this into practice.
This is where the real learning happens, right? Taking what we've discussed and actually trying it out. So, the first step of the challenge is pretty straightforward.
What is it?
It's simply practice making a phone call using the phrases and strategies we've covered today. Don't just think about it, actually do it.
Okay, but practice how? Just talking to the air.
Well, the source gives you specific, realistic scenarios to choose from, which makes it much more concrete. This isn't just an abstract exercise. It's about practicing for a real-world need you might actually have.
Okay, what are the scenarios?
Option 1, practice calling a hotel to make a reservation.
Oh, that's a good one. Very practical.
Yeah, think about it. It would involve using a formal opening, probably asking questions about room availability or dates, needing to understand prices, confirming details, lots of the skills we covered.
Okay, what's another option?
Option 2, practice calling a restaurant to order food for takeout or delivery.
Another common task.
Right. This might start slightly less formally than a hotel, depending on the place. but it still requires really clear, specific communication about exactly what you want to order, maybe clarifying menu items, giving your address, handling payment details. It's a tangible task with a very clear outcome, getting your food order right.
True. And the third option.
The third option provided by the source is calling a company to ask about a job opening.
Okay, back to a clearly formal context.
Definitely. This is a classic situation where making a strong professional first impression using appropriate language is absolutely crucial. You'd need to use that formal opening we discussed, state your purpose clearly, maybe ask to speak to the hiring manager.
So 3 concrete scenarios to choose from: hotel, restaurant, or job inquiry.
Exactly. Pick one that feels relevant or maybe slightly challenging for you. And then the third step of the challenge is perhaps the most insightful, even if it might feel a little awkward at first.
Go on.
Record yourself speaking the conversation.
Record myself. Ugh, really?
I know most people hate the sound of their own recorded voice, but it's so valuable. You could role play both sides of the conversation or just practice your part.
Why is recording it so helpful?
Because hearing yourself back gives you objective feedback that's hard to get otherwise. It allows you to really notice your pacing. Are you speaking too fast or too slow? How clear is your pronunciation? Does your tone actually sound confident or maybe a bit hesitant? How smoothly are you using those key phrases we practiced?
Huh. I guess that's true. It's a low-stakes way to kind of critique yourself before a real call.
Exactly. Low stakes, high reward in terms of identifying areas for improvement.
Okay, so choose a scenario, practice it, and record yourself. What else?
Well, as you undertake this challenge, the source suggests reflecting on a couple of specific questions to make the practice even more effective, to deepen the learning.
Like self-assessment questions.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
First, what felt like the hardest part of practicing this phone call in English?
Okay, identifying the pain point.
Exactly. Was it remembering the right opening phrase? Was it anticipating the possible responses you might get? Was it using the clarification phrases smoothly? Or maybe just dealing with the general feeling of being rushed or put on the spot? Pinpointing that specific difficulty helps you know exactly where to focus your energy in your next practice session.
Makes sense. Focus your efforts. What's the second question?
The second question is, which phrase from this deep dive felt most useful or easiest to remember?
Focusing on the positive, too.
Right. Identifying the phrases that kind of naturally stick with you, the ones that feel comfortable coming out of your mouth, that gives you a solid foundation to build upon. You can make those your core toolkit, the ones you rely on first, and then gradually work on adding the others as you get more comfortable.
Okay, so reflect on the hardest part and the easiest or most useful phrase. That turns the practice exercise into a much more targeted learning experience, tailored to your own strengths and weaknesses.
Precisely. It makes a practice deliberate, not just random repetition.
Now, the source also gives us a little glimpse forward, doesn't it? It mentions sounding more natural in general conversation as a related topic.
It does, yeah. And it's a good reminder that the skills you're building specifically for phone calls here, things like clear expression, managing the back and forth of interaction, using specific language for specific functions like requesting or clarifying, these are highly transferable skills.
So, getting better at phone calls helps your overall spoken English.
Absolutely. Mastering the unique challenge of phone calls definitely contributes to your overall fluency and confidence in any spoken English context. It's all connected.
It's like conquering one specific difficult area gives you confidence to tackle others. A stepping stone.
That's a great way to think about it. Each context you become comfortable communicating in adds to your overall capability and confidence as a speaker.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's circle back for a final thought. Let's return to that fundamental challenge we identified right at the very beginning.
Communicating effectively when you can't see the other person, the lack of visual cues.
Exactly. The phone takes away all those subtle and sometimes not so subtle visual cues we rely on. The confirming nod, the questioning glance, the slight smile that shows understanding, the hand gesture that adds emphasis.
All gone. Your voice and the specific words you choose are literally the only things you have to work with to convey meaning and manage the interaction.
And this is precisely why those specific phrases we've extracted from the source today are so incredibly powerful, isn't it?
It really is. They aren't just, polite options or suggestions. They are functional tools. They are designed specifically to compensate for that missing layer of visual information.
So knowing exactly what to say when you need someone to slow down.
Uh-huh.
or to repeat something you didn't hear,
Right.
or to explain a word or idea differently. That isn't just helpful, it's actually essential for successful communication over the phone.
It's your method of getting the feedback you're missing visually, but you're getting it explicitly through verbal requests. You're asking for that clarity directly.
It transforms what can feel like an unknown, unpredictable, and potentially scary situation, answering or making a phone call in English, into something much more manageable.
Yeah, it becomes a task you can approach strategically. Because you have these specific verbal controls, these phrases, ready to deploy to navigate the common issues that come up.
That feels much less intimidating.
It should. And the source leaves us with some really excellent encouragement right at the end. It says, keep talking, keep practicing, and enjoy learning English.
That's a great note to end on.
I think so too. And maybe adding specifically for phone calls, deliberate practice using these targeted phrases, consciously understanding why they are necessary because of that lack of visual cues. That's really the key.
The key to overcoming that barrier.
Yeah, overcoming the barrier and hopefully starting to actually enjoy using English in this particular communication context instead of just dreading it.
It empowers you.
Yeah.
It makes the phone call feel less like a high-stakes test of your listening and speaking skills with no safety net.
And more like just another conversation, one you have the tools to handle.
That feels like a truly practical and, empowering takeaway from our deep dive today. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored mastering phone calls in English.
My pleasure.
We really hope that you, our listener, feel significantly more prepared and much more confident for your next phone call.
Go on, put those phrases to work. You can do it.